Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Viva Natural Health podcast. Today, we're talking all about the GI MAP stool test and how functional lab tests like this can honestly give you answers and guidance and clarity if you've been struggling with your health. Let's say for a long time, you've just been trying your own thing, researching, looking online for answers, or maybe you've been working with another practitioner and you don't feel like they're going deep enough. They feel like they're missing something. Even if you've done a stool test before, it is so worth revisiting these things and making sure that the stool test is a really comprehensive one because they're not all created equal. I've had clients do stool tests through the doctors, which are important for ruling out things like bowel cancer. They test some inflammatory markers, they look for blood, they can look at these big, nasty parasites, but if those things come back clear, you're then often told that everything's fine, you don't have any issues, and you just get an IBS diagnosis, which is just a wastebasket term for you don't have cancer, you don't have Crohn's disease, your bowel's a bit irritated, and we don't know why. Try this little FODMAP diet and some medication for the rest of your life, unfortunately. But that does not have to be the case. Even if you do have an IBS diagnosis, it is completely reversible. I have healed my symptoms digestively and have been free of those for many, many years now. And they got to a point where they were really, really bad, pretty debilitating in my day-to-day life, bloating, walking around with my hands pressing in my stomach because that's the only way that I could get relief. And not only was my poor gut health manifesting digestively, it was manifesting in other symptoms and other parts of my body too, which it usually does because the body is interconnected. So my brain, my mental health was also off. Inflammation in the gut equals inflammation in the brain. So I had low mood, I was just more pessimistic and anxious and a real control freak, just hated anything that was outside of my structure and routine. And now I am way more chill, way more go with the flow. My spiritual practice has helped with that too, but I really feel like my nervous system and my capacity for stress and my resiliency is so much stronger after working on my gut. Even my clarity in life, my vision, my connection to my purpose, what I want from my life has all improved as well. My ability to manifest, my intuition skills has all dramatically improved working on my gut health. These are some of the things that you don't often hear about, and people think that they don't need gut healing unless they have an IBS diagnosis or they're having diarrhea every day. But I'm telling you, if you've got acne, if you've got eczema, psoriasis, period pain, joint pain, fatigue, brain fog, urinary tract infections, thrush, BV, you have lower back pain, you struggle with your weight, your metabolism, your blood sugar, all of these things can be linked to poor gut health. You don't have to have any digestive symptoms at all to have a leaky gut, to have parasite infections, to have bacterial overgrowths. In fact, some of the worst stool test results I've ever seen, the ones with the most imbalances, have been in people with the least digestive symptoms. And it took a bit of convincing them to work on their gut and investigate through stool testing when I've been working with them as clients, but then they finally agreed to do some investigation because they're just sick of the stubborn skin issues and these symptoms. They're doing all the right things, they're eating well, and we get the GI map report back and they have literally every imbalance that you can imagine, similar to what I did back when I did my very first stool test. I actually have a podcast episode from last year, how a poop test changed my life. That's the title of it. I'll link it in the episode show notes if you want to hear how it really changed my health journey and the trajectory of my healing process, because I'd gone from not getting any answers, not really knowing what's going on, to doing this stool test. It was I think it was the first functional lab test I ever did when I worked with a practitioner back in the day before I qualified myself, and it showed that I had all of these issues, some of which I had never heard of at the time, and now I know are super common, like SIBO and candida overgrowth, and I had bile acid malabsorption and low stomach acid. So I'd gone from not really know what was going on at all to here are 10 different things that you need to work on. But that is actually a good thing. I'd rather do a test and it come back with something to work on than feel crappy and feel like something's off and my labs are showing normal. So if you've done a doctor's stool test, just know they are very limited if you don't have one of these big diseases, but just because that says that it's normal, it doesn't mean that that's the end and you've completely investigated everything. And even some stool tests on the market, some of the more conventional ones that are a bit more mainstream these days, they're also not looking deep enough at some imbalances and they come back negative for some things. They're just showing unnecessary information, like all of these names of good bacteria that you have. And it's good to know how much good bacteria and diversity is in there, but I don't really need to know every single bacteria and its name and how high it is, because it doesn't really give me the data that I need. So if you've done some testing, doesn't mean that you've investigated everything thoroughly. Not everything is created equal in that way. And even if you've not done testing, this is the perfect opportunity. And I would highly recommend, one of the biggest things I'd say is do testing early on, because it really does save so much time and money and guesswork and stress just to know what you're working on. You need to have a roadmap, otherwise you're just shooting in the dark. You're just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks with different supplements and products, and you might feel like you're saving money in the short term, but I promise it's just going to drag the whole thing out even longer. Whereas if you do a stool test and say, right, I have this elevated bad bacteria, you know then, or a practitioner who's skilled in this area will know, right, this type of herb works best for this. Here's the protocol that you need to be following for the next few months. Here's how it ties into all of your other coexisting imbalances. If you've done blood work, if you've done mineral testing, they put the puzzle pieces together and create a plan for you to follow to address all of those things in a staged process. That is the ideal situation. There's usually more than one thing going on in the gut. Once there's one imbalance, there's usually multiple. But the GI MAP stool test is the best one on the market, in my opinion. And I have mentioned this on last week's episode, I think, but for the month of November only, this is the best offer that I have all year round. For the month of November, when you sign up to my one-to-one coaching program, it's called the Restoring Energy program, you get a complimentary GI MAP stool test and a really detailed interpretation and analysis of that, which is worth around £575. A lot of my clients who sign up anyway throughout the rest of the year end up going on to purchase a stool test with me. So you are actually saving a lot of money, and we're going to do that straight away over the next few weeks before Christmas. Get your testing done so that you can begin into 2026 already with a plan of action. There's not only the stool test included, but as standard, there is the hair tissue mineral analysis as well. My two favorite functional lab tests and the two most commonly used with clients. And this combination is the dream team to figure out what is going on, because without adequate mineral balance, your gut can't heal. But if your gut's unhealthy, you're probably not absorbing your minerals properly, or you're burning through them too fast. So it is the perfect combo of tests, and you're getting both of them. 6 months of coaching, you're getting access to my client community, my mind body reset library that's got hours and hours, over 30 plus hours of content. So if you love this podcast, if you love my social media and what I share, the mind body reset library is an extra resource that you get lifetime access to. Future updates and additions will be in there, and it's like all of my best work in one area. Masterclasses on there, there's recipe guides, there's Q&As, all sorts of things, and I just know you're gonna love it. But the thing is, with this offer, I only have limited availability. I only have limited test kits to send out, and at the time of recording, it's a few days before this was released, I only have 4 spaces left for this offer. And I don't want you to miss out, because this, like I said, is the best offer all year round. And I'm actually not sure if I'm going to be accepting new one-to-one clients in the new year. And I'm not just saying that, I'm being honest. And definitely with this offer, it's not going to be around for the foreseeable. So you're at least going to have to wait until next November if I'm going to be doing it at all, even. So if you want to have a call with me, I will have availability over the next couple of weeks. Send me an email, inquiries with an E, at avivanaturalhealth.co.uk. You can message me on Instagram, social media at Viva Natural Health, or the link for an enrollment call is in the episode show notes as well. Let's have a quick chat, 30 minutes, completely free of charge, It's no obligation, so let's just chat about your situation and if it would be a good fit for us to even work together. And if it would be a good fit, we'll talk about what that would look like for us to work together, what could potentially be going on in your situation, and then we'll discuss if you're happy to go ahead, how to get started. We'll order your lab test kits, we'll have your first session, and then you'll be on your way and on the path to healing. But in this episode, I wanted to share a little bit more about the GI MAP stool test and what it shows. There will be a sample report included in the episode show notes too. So a GI MAP sample, so you can see all of the different markers, all of the different assessments that are on there. It's a multiple page report, but I'm just going to talk you through it and what I'm looking for in particular when I'm doing a stool test with my clients. So on the first page, it's a pathogens page. And this is looking at things like salmonella, some viral infections, some big nasty parasites like Giardia, Campylobacter. And these are often recognised by doctors, and sometimes the stool tests are looking at things like this. But for the majority of my clients, I do see them sometimes, but the majority of times this page is clear. So the middle column is the results, and DL means it's below detectable levels. Sometimes the odd little E. coli bacteria is flagging up, or someone's recently had food poisoning and there's still some salmonella in the system, but usually the first page is clear. Second page is looking at things like H. pylori, which I also have a full in-depth podcast episode on recently. I'll include that in the show notes, so if you just want to search H. pylori and Viva Natural Health on YouTube, you can watch along, and that's going into a deep dive on this bacteria. It's Helicobacter pylori is its full fancy name. It lives in the stomach and it survives in an alkaline environment. So what it does is dilute your stomach acid, makes it weaker, makes it more hospitable then for other bacteria and fungus and yeast and parasites to come on board. So it really is a problem if you have this bacteria, especially if it's elevated and you have symptoms. Not everyone is symptomatic and not everyone has to clear H. pylori out of the system. In some cases it can live in harmony and it's completely fine and it just lives in peace, in balance with the rest of the ecosystem. But if you do have symptoms, gastrointestinally or otherwise, the H. pylori could definitely be involved in that. So again, a practitioner like myself would be able to guide you through specific treatments for that, because it does differ from a regular bacterial overgrowth and SIBO versus a parasite. The treatment for H. pylori and all of these things is slightly different. So you really need to know what you're targeting and how elevated it is as well. Because if it's just a minor overgrowth, sometimes a few weeks of treatment is enough. Whereas if it's major, then you might need months and different cycles of treatment as well, because some of these bugs are pretty stubborn. They want to survive as well. They want to live and reproduce. So we want to make sure that we're looking holistically, not just throwing herbs and antibiotics at them. We want to see, how did this happen in the first place? Why did you become such a hospitable host for all of these pathogens and infections? Because if we just treat the gut but not the whole system, then the environment is just going to be the same. And if you've not fixed the underlying causes, then the problem will start to come back. So this is where reoccurring infections happen, and that's why people get stuck in these cycles of treatment and strict diets, and they're not really getting anywhere. It's because they're not looking at the whole body as an ecosystem. So we look at H. pylori plus these things called virulence factors, which just show if the H. pylori is a little bit more nasty. Some of these ones can be linked to certain types of cancer even. So I have seen them come back sometimes positive, but sometimes it's just elevated H. pylori, or the H. pylori is there just lurking in the background, causing a bit of inflammation and poor digestion. And a few weeks of treatment is enough to clear it off. And then the next section is your beneficial bacteria. So it's looking at lactobacillus, bifidobacterium, and Akkermansia, like all of these lovely microbes that help to protect our immune system and create nutrients for us, help our gut become nice and healthy, create this nice mucus and short chain fatty acids that keep the gut lining nice and robust and free from these leaky holes in there. But we aren't aiming for 100% good bacteria, the healthy ideal balance is about 80-20. 80 good, 20 bad. That is what we're aiming for. So we're not going for every single strain of bad bacteria and yeast is cleared. That's not even possible, and you wouldn't even want that. So it's just the overall balance of bacteria. Is there way more bad than good in there? I describe it as being like a car park. The more good cars are filling the spaces, the less room there are for bad cars. So not aiming for perfection here. On the page after that, there's opportunistic and dysbiotic bacteria. There's autoimmune related bacteria as well. So not all of these are directly harmful in themselves. It's just when there's multiple of them, or they're overgrown, or the person has a few other imbalances, that they start to become problematic. But no one's test is perfect. I've never seen a stool test or even a mineral test to say, to be honest, that has come back completely fine, no imbalances. There's always something going on in there. And even if you feel really good, this is a chance to optimize things further. And you'd be surprised. So many times clients have come to me like, I just want to optimize things. They're just very proactive with their health. This is my favorite type of client and what I wish everyone would do, not wait until they're at rock bottom before they do something. But they come to me just like, I want to be healthier. I want to maybe have kids in a few years. I just want to perform the best that I can with my business. And we do all of these tests. We find out actually there's way more room for optimization and improvements here. And then they, after a few months, have got the health to this next level and that they didn't even know was possible. They thought they felt good before, but they'd actually just got used to feeling kind of mediocre. Maybe they're better than some of their colleagues with their health and they don't really have any major symptoms, but they start to realize, oh, actually before my energy was just not good, or I would crash every afternoon, or my skin was just a little bit dull, or I would get painful periods every month and I just thought it was normal. So there's always room for improvement. We don't want to be obsessive with it, but doing a stool test at least once a year, I think, is the best health insurance policy, something that I continue to do now because I've been at rock bottom with my health and then I had to spend tens of thousands to overcome that. So now that I'm in a good place, I'm not just going to coast and let things potentially slide over the years. I want to keep things in a good place. It's so much easier to maintain than it is to get you from rock bottom to optimal. So I, once a year, do a bunch of lab tests. I look at my minerals, I look at my stool tests, sometimes do a hormone panel, definitely blood work, thyroid check, and make sure that I keep tweaking things from a place of I love my body and I want it to be performing at its absolute best. And that is just something that I recommend to everyone. The opportunistic and dysbiotic bacteria section can also be indicative of bacterial overgrowth and conditions like SIBO, which is very linked to IBS and a lot of other conditions like acne and rosacea. So if you have any of those symptoms, even fatigue and just leaky gut, there's usually SIBO involved. It's not the gold standard test for SIBO. That is actually a breath test, and even that's just a bit of a pain to do. It's like a 3-hour process. There's a fasting restriction with your diet involved, and it can also just be inaccurate sometimes. But I've ran them side by side so many times, and I found that this section of the test, when there's a lot of elevations and in certain types of bacteria, it can indicate SIBO. Even if someone has high levels of beneficial bacteria, that can be indicative as well, because with SIBO, it's not always bad bacteria. It can be good bacteria just in the wrong place. And then the autoimmune species, that doesn't mean that you have an autoimmune condition or will develop one. It just means that they've done studies and they found that certain bacteria, like Citrobacter, can be linked to certain autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, rheumatoid arthritis. There's bacteria like Klebsiella as well that are looked at. So if you have autoimmune, you definitely want to work on your gut health because that is integral. Your gut is your immune system. I did a podcast episode a few months ago. We can link it in the show notes. That's something like the 3 ingredients that you need to develop an autoimmune condition. And poor gut health, leaky gut, is one of the markers. You'll have to listen to the episode to hear the other 2. I just want to check, are you addressing the healing foundations? Not sure what I mean. Well, these are the important factors that I believe that you need to address in order to be in optimal health and overcome your stubborn health issues and symptoms, whether that's chronic digestive issues, acne, hair loss, period problems, weight gain, anxiety, fatigue. I could go on. Because I want as many of you as possible to have this life-changing information, I've bundled together 6 of my juiciest and info-packed masterclasses priced at just £111. Not only are you getting these recordings, which are between 60 and 90 minutes long each, on the following subjects: the power of the subconscious mind, stress, trauma, and the nervous system, supporting your female menstrual cycle, mastering your metabolism, optimizing sleep, gut health and detox. You're also going to receive my healthy groceries shopping list and my favorite non-toxic products guide, which are both usually reserved for my one-to-one clients. Whether you're brand new to the holistic healing world or you've been trying to work on things for a while but feel stuck, I can guarantee there's something within this content that will help you to understand your next steps and what you're missing. Sometimes it's something so foundational that's being overlooked. Get instant access to the Foundations bundle today for just £111 by clicking the link in the episode show notes, and I can't wait to hear about what you've learned. Grab your pen and paper to make notes and get started today. There is also a section that looks at parasites and yeast, candida, fungus, that whole family. I've seen with these sections though that they aren't 100% accurate. If they come back positive, it's a definite positive. Whereas if they come back negative, it's not a definite negative. There's just so much that can go on. These pathogens can be very sneaky. They can live behind biofilms. And I've had clients test negative for a parasite on Monday, but I've already got them on a parasite cleanse because I've already suspected it. And by Friday, they're already seeing worms that they're passing out through their stools on this cleanse. So just take it with a pinch of salt. If it comes back positive, you definitely have an issue, and they do come back sometimes, but not always. One of my first few stool tests had parasites come up. It's shown candida overgrowth at times, but there are some different tests to look a bit more deeply at the yeast and candida, which is the organic acid. Urine test, sometimes that comes back positive, stool test comes back negative, or vice versa. I also don't really see the section on viruses in the gut and worms. Don't really see those come back positive that much, so just bear that in mind as well. And then final section is on your digestion and absorption. This is a really useful section to end the report. It's looking at markers such as steatocrit, which is showing your fat absorption capacity. And I really struggled with my gallbladder at one point and was running into deficiencies of fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A, that was driving acne, keratosis pilaris, poor immune system. I was deficient in vitamin D, and plus on top of that, I have genetic susceptibilities to vitamin D deficiency. I just have a high requirement for that. That was messing with my immune system and my mood and my bone health and my hormones and everything. But the problem wasn't that I just needed more supplements, it's that I wasn't even absorbing my fat. So I could be supplementing with these high doses, but until I fixed the fat malabsorption, I wasn't even going to be benefiting from them in the first place. So addressing my fat absorption, my gallbladder, my bile made a massive difference to my health, and I still have to be mindful of it at times because just in my family history, the women in my family tend to have gallbladder stuff going on. Luckily, my mum's not had hers removed, but her mum and my grandma did as well. So it's just a little predisposition that I just need to stay on top of. And yeah, it makes a massive difference. Then there's a marker called elastase, which is your digestive enzyme production, a reflection of how you're breaking down carbs, proteins, and fats. And that one can sometimes be really weak. It can show if there's the need for extra digestive support, and that can be as a result of mindless eating, stress, nutrient deficiencies, or these other infections and imbalances that you've got going on in your gut. There's a marker that looks at your beta-glucuronidase and the gut hormone connection, specifically estrogen. Sometimes when that's high, it can mean that you are not eliminating estrogen properly and you're recycling it back into the body. So anyone with estrogen dominance, you want to make sure that your gut isn't part of this, because that would change the plan, that would change the treatment that's necessary. Instead of taking things to lower your estrogen, it's actually supporting your estrogen clearance that is different, that is needed. So we look at that one. We look at your immune system, secretory IgA. This is a really useful marker. Sometimes it can be super high that shows your immune system just going crazy for some reason. Could be the parasite in there. Even if the parasite section comes back normal, if this is high and you've got other symptoms and risk factors, this is one of the things that's making me have a little red flag that you might have a parasite going on. It can be due to food sensitivities and stress and infections in the body. Or if it's super low, it can be a sign that your immune system's just very depleted, suppressed for some reason. Could be stress, even trauma. It could be that you don't have enough beneficial bacteria, things like mold and other immune suppressors could be involved in that. I still win the award for lowest secretory IgA that I have ever seen in my career. Even the lab at the time was like, this is really, really low. Are you okay? And the ideal range is between 1 and 2,000. Mine was at a 20 or something crazy. And then obviously what is needed is to address the cause of it. And then there's extra nutrients that you can use to support your immune system and build up this nice supportive protective mucus in the gut that keeps it from being leaky and inflamed. They do test calprotectin, which is an inflammatory marker of the gut and can be used to differentiate IBS versus IBD, but if it's super high, that's when I refer on to practitioners. I've actually, through my stool testing and coaching, had a few clients actually realize that they have Crohn's or colitis through this test. I don't diagnose them. I send them with the results to the doctor if it comes back at a concerning level, and they've had celiac, they've had inflammatory bowel disease, and they've just had all of these tests done through the doctors and been told everything's fine, and this test has actually picked up some big imbalances. So that's a positive as well, and addressing that has meant that they've got relief from the symptoms. What else is tested? Yeah, there's a few other markers on there for that last part of the test, but overall, I think it is a must-have for every single person, at least once in your life, but even once a year. Let's do a stool test. Let's not wait until you're at rock bottom. If you've been just trying different things and not really having any clarity and structure or data to go off, this is your reminder and my plea to you to please, for the sake of your health and just to not make this process any harder or longer than needed, let's do some testing. Then I will create a plan for you to follow for the next 6 months. It will be in a phased process. You'll have my constant support and guidance throughout that time through our one-to-one sessions on Zoom. We have email support even. You'll be my client community. And healing your gut can change your life. It did for me, change everything. And it meant that everything else I was doing with my diet and my sleep and my stress routine was more effective because this central important part of my body was in a good place. If you're trying to work on your mental health and positive thinking, but you've got leaky gut, your neurotransmitters are going to be off. If you're doing all of the sleep routine things, you're turning off your screens, you're wearing the red light glasses at night, but your gut's off, you're still going to be struggling with your serotonin and melatonin production. Your body's just going to be naturally more stressed. If you're trying to balance your hormones, but you haven't worked on your gut, you've got fertility issues, period problems, endometriosis, PCOS, all of those things can be linked to the gut, even if you've never struggled once with bloating and your digestive symptoms aren't really a thing. I promise you there's going to be something that's going on in there. So in this deal for the rest of November, it will end in December, and you'll need to have your first call before my Christmas break as well. So you've got a few weeks to take advantage of this opportunity. And like I said, only 4 slots are remaining for this deal. I don't need to miss out. If you want to have a chat, get in touch. If you've got any questions, let me know. Check out the website page. It's got all the details on there. And I would love to have you inside the Root Program package. So hope you enjoyed this episode. You learned a little bit more about the importance of gut health. And this stool test, I talk about gut health quite a lot, but I thought it needed its own episode for me to go and even send this to clients when I'm talking to them about stool testing, because I think people just think it's this like basic test, but it's really not. It's super comprehensive and very different to other ones out there. And functional medicine, functional lab testing gave me answers when I was really not getting anywhere with the conventional system. So if they can help me and my clients, they can definitely help you. And yeah, just have a think about it. Don't go another year thinking I'll do this myself and I'll just cut out more foods or take this random supplement. You need targeted support, not guesswork. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you back here next week for another episode.